Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of Header Footer Presents, a retrospective of Manifest IO. Today, we're going to talk about TimeLab Symposium Manifest IO, and especially we're going to talk to Harshini Karunaratne, the main curator for this symposium. But first, let's talk about the Header Footer Gallery and the New Media Caucus. The Header Footer Gallery is part of the New Media Caucus and is dedicated to promoting the creative output of our members by situating their work in thoughtfully curated exhibitions that take place across our entire web presence. New Media Caucus is an international nonprofit association formed to promote the development and understanding of new media art. We represent and serve artists, designers, practitioners, historians, theorists, educators, students, and scholars, recognizing the new media art to be inherently interdisciplinary, multimodal, and evolving. We support and advance a wide range of inquiry and to catalyze further evolution of the field. The New Media Caucus is committed to extending and sustaining the diversity of our community, board, and membership to promote an environment of equality, inclusion, and respect for difference. We prioritize inclusion as an ongoing collaborative process of growth that we continually address, both within the caucus and in our field. Okay, so with all that out of the way, first of all, today Harshini is going to talk to us about Manifest.io, how it began, how this crazy idea began. Because I heard
How
about
it all
this. What was it?
manifested.
Yeah, how it all manifested around like October, November, and then all of it, like in January, it was already happening. So that was pretty impressive. And with us is also Constanza Salazar, who's going to be like running the big, hard hitting questions. Anyhow, so
I'll try.
let's start with the very basic. Why? How did this begin?
Why? Why? What? How? Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, it's such a big question because there were also like so many different inspirations and influences that went into it. So I guess I should start with like, I mean, every time I would talk to somebody and I would be like, "Oh, I'm organizing this thing, I'm doing this symposium," they would look at me and be like, "And who are you again? Like, what do you do?" So maybe I should start there. So my background is as a video artist and a projection designer, anything that's visual, that's usually what I do. But over the years, I've had many different jobs, whether that's in social media or as a technician in a theater or in like planning, managing an event, whatever. So I've had many different experiences. And I felt all of those experiences kind of culminate into this one big thing. But essentially, I was living in Abu Dhabi for about 7 years, which is a pretty diverse city. Like just to give some idea, like 80 to 90% of the population are international. So that's already like amazing to be in a city like that, big city like that, because it's really a melting pot of so many different people. And it's really that you don't really think about diversity is kind of just a given, like there you don't really think about to make sure that we curate X number of global South artists or anything like that. And so coming to Berlin, which I moved here about a year and a half ago, already I had to like navigate being in the city in a very different way and realize that, okay, I'm actually in a city where I have to think about where I'm from in a very different way. And I have to think about, okay, what spaces do I actually have access to? And it became very clear also that there's a lot of talk, decolonization is such a buzzword here. And it's often, as we know, just for marketing purposes, right? There's no real like meaningful effort going on. So I was very like frustrated about being here and having to navigate all of that. I was also in a university doing my master's degree. That's why I moved here, and very aware that, okay, actually for the first time in my kind of educational experience, I'm being taught only by men. And I felt like I was in a very patriarchal institution. It's a school that has arts students and business students, but really the focus seems to be on the business students. And also it's a university where there's in the arts, there's photography, illustration, game design, and then we have the department that I was in, which was media spaces, which then became new media design. And it was very frustrating, actually, because it was very clear that the university was like kind of just for profit, because we were a small group of students, maybe about like 20 people when I entered into the master's program. And we would kind of study on the third floor. And then halfway through the semester, or halfway through our year of studying, they rented out the third floor to a different university. They rented it out. They didn't give us a heads up. And suddenly there was this kind of, like, how can we be media spaces? How can we be new media design and not actually have access to space? So this was a very, very big frustration from the institution that I was in, because it meant that when it came time for me to do my thesis as well, we had to fight for space, which is kind of ridiculous to even think about. So I was very kind of peeved. I was very kind of annoyed by that situation. And I was also setting myself up so that when I graduated, I would also be able to teach in the university and hopefully make some changes. And I had amazing faculty that were supporting that and are a huge reason of why I'm able to teach now. And I wanted to make sure that when it came time that I teach, that my students don't go through the same frustration of having to access space. This is absolutely ridiculous. And also, we were also coming in a time where this is still very important now. We have so much going on in Iran, and in our university, there's a huge student population from Iran, and yet there was a lot of silence around it. When with everything happening in Ukraine, it's important to talk about. The university issued a statement, but they didn't issue a statement when things were happening in Iran. There was nothing, even though there's, like I said, a lot of students from Iran. So that was also very annoying to realize that in a university, it's a unique place, because even with all of these frustrations, it's probably the most diverse place in Berlin to study. It's also in English, which also is why there is such a big diversity, because it means that anyone could really study there if you speak English. And so I wanted to create space so that we actually had, so new media design actually had a space to exhibit their work, but also that there could be a platform for students from different backgrounds to showcase their work, and say whatever they wanted to say, and however political they wanted it to be without any sort of restrictions. So that was like a huge motivation. I mean, really to be like, okay, I want this to happen. And I also realized that when I graduated, I wasn't connected to other places in Berlin. Like Berlin is such a hub for art and technology. Who else is studying this? Where are the other universities? And I felt like when I graduated, I didn't know anyone from another institution. So I started to pitch my idea to the head of department at the time, Stefan Gunzel, who I said, I want to do this like idea for a symposium. And it came about, I mean, like I said, there's so many different, this is going to be a very long monologue, y'all. So I started thinking about all of these frustrations, and also being in Europe, I had the chance to go to ISEA, which is where we met IRL, Rene,
Oh yeah,
for the first time.
we did.
And it's the International Symposium for Electronic Arts. I mean, I had a blast. It was great. I learned so much, but there's such a disproportionate representation from the West, like you cannot claim to be international and then have like 100 Canadians. Like, I'm sorry, like this is not, like they're great, their work is amazing, but I think if you're really gonna be like have the name international, then we should look to span out and have other artists. Like it's really interesting to think about in all of these new media festivals that you don't see a lot of South Asian artists, and obviously the most obvious thing is that there just isn't access to kind of, there's no funding to be able to travel to something like this and showcase your work. So I think if you are something big like ISEA, make that happen,
Yeah.
and actually bring in other perspectives of what new media is and what it looks like in different parts of the world. And same with Ars Electronica, loved it. It was cool, but yeah, like they had like 6 or 7 Latinx artists, and this is not representative of South America.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I mean, when you go into Latin America, you also have to take into account that institutions do not support us. Like
Yeah.
our own institutions, like I requested funds to travel to Isaiah, and they outright said no. And I know that like at least five of the universities I've been involved with in one way or another in Latin America, they've all said we don't do funding for international travel. So there's also this whole thing about like the institutions in Latin America and even in some other countries. I can only speak of Latin America because of the people I know. Uh, they don't support us. So I understand, and the problem with what I say and all those things is that it is in Europe and it makes it more expensive for us to travel. At the same time, like you said, like there's no funding from ISEA and all these institutions, but at the same time, we're working with Gaia Games Arts International, and we requested funds to bring people from South America to Canada to do another symposium. No one would give us the money.
I mean,
So
it's ridiculous
even
also
if you
because
want, it's
like in something like Isaiah, why isn't like artist fee and like education for why isn't this part of the budget, right? Like I feel like ultimately it's whatever city that you're in is just trying to like publicize itself, obviously, right? Like it's all a marketing stunt for the actual city. But you can add all of these things to the funding, right? Like just shoot high and like see what you get. And obviously I don't know the inside and what's going on. But I think the last I said, the one that we met, I think it was the first time where like some people actually were able to get, you know, a fee for their presentations and writing. And it's kind of
yeah.
crazy to me that it's only now that it's able to happen. That you write a paper, you're invited, and then you're like, oh, I gotta cover my own expenses. Like this is such a huge gap. This doesn't happen in any other industry, right? It's like in the
It
arts.
well, yeah, it's the arts and heritage. Like pretty much anything academic, you pay to publish. Like, and we don't have it as bad as science. If you want to publish, let's say in the medical field, you have to pay about $1,000 to $3,000 to publish,
Nuts.
and then they charge you back to get access to your own paper.
Nuts.
It's so we actually have it easier than most like scientists and people like that. So it's
Wow.
insane. Anyhow, yeah. Because I have friends who are like hematologists and microbiologists and all these things, and they're like, "You don't pay?" I was like, "No," and they're like, I paid $3,000 for publishing just to get it read. Like if it
Ridiculous.
gets rejected, the $3,000 are gone.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah,
Oh my God, it's
Terrible.
like my visa application I just had to do for the UK. I just paid that much amount of money and I'm like fingers crossed that that it pulls through. But yeah, I mean
good
this
luck
is
with
like
that.
such a
Anyhow,
huge problem, right? Like it's nuts to even think about. And I really wanted to create also a space where I'm so tired of seeing all of these like open calls, you know, and I do air quotes, which is like just like open call, submit your work, we'll exhibit it. Oh, by the way, you have to pay this month. No, I was not gonna do any of that. Like as much as possible, like I would incur whatever um you know fee from organizing an event. And I wanted to keep it like open and accessible for everybody. And I actually, the idea for a symposium came because I was having a conversation with the last curator for a festival called New Radicalisms that happened in Rotterdam last year. It's a festival on Arab identity and the diaspora. Her name is Hilda. And then I was having a conversation with an artist who was participating there, Omar Adel, and they both have Omar lives in Berlin and Hilda was visiting, and we met and we were having a conversation and we were like so passionate about like arts and what needed to change. And Omar was talking about how when he was a master student, the students were kind of upset about this hierarchy between like the professors and the students, and so they decided for their final presentations, rather than framing it in this kind of like, oh, you're grading me for my work, that they wanted to organize a symposium so that it created this like equal ground, so that you know when you're getting critique, you're not getting critique for your grade, you're having a conversation, you're having a discourse, a discussion. And that for me really resonated. And I think like he said symposium and I was like, ooh, that's what I want to do, you know, that word. And I remember right after I was like, oh my God, I want to do something. And so with all of these like different feelings and emotions kind of coming together until finally I pitched to Stefan Kunzel, the head of department of new media design at my university. I was like, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? And he was like, it sounds great. Like, I think you should come to this colloquium that I'm attending that's with like other universities, and it's at the University of the Arts, and there's going to be a bunch of people there. It's in German, but everyone speaks English. Like, you can come and pitch your idea. Yeah, it's like a room full of white men. But they were all nice, very great people. I went and I pitched my idea, and I was super nervous. And everyone was very supportive, and I followed up, and I actually from that got a lot of other invitations to come back to the University of Arts. They have an amazing program with Technical University, also called Design and Computation. They were inviting me to come check out their next talks, the exhibitions. Another amazing curator, Lucas Feireis, who teaches at University of Arts, invited me to his classes. And I felt like I was finally getting the master's education that I wanted. But I started to become very connected and meet other students, which is very important to me, meet other students, understand what art and technology looks like in other universities. And actually, in Ars Electronica, when I went, there was a university from Berlin exhibiting there. There was a few actually, and I remember thinking, "My God, this work is amazing! Like this is not even master. This is like bachelor's, and their work is excellent." You know. And I was like, "What is the gap? Like I'm just finishing my thesis, and I feel like absolute shit about my work, and here I'm looking at a work from bachelor students that's exhibiting Ars Electronica. What is the gap? Is it access to resources? Is it knowledge? Like, well, what's going on?" So kind of all of these feelings wrapped up, and finally, October I went to this colloquium. In December, it was very clear that everybody liked the idea. Uh, just to give some sense of timeline, also the semesters here tend to end around February or March at the very latest. But early February is when the semester ends. So I knew I wanted to do like the final exhibition of our students for it to not take place in the university where we would have to fight for space. I wanted it to take place outside. So in December, it was very clear that I had everyone's support. It was also very clear that the timeline would be too short to ask for any sort of funding or anything. But I thought, okay, if I can't ask for funding, what can I do? I can look for a venue, right? I can look for a venue, I can pick a date, and we can make this happen. So I started looking for venues in December, and then just got the ball rolling, in my university, there's actually a studio called TimeLab, which is a kind of research center or a laboratory for artistic research that's really focused on hybrid media and transmedia narratives. And my colleague Basil Naori, who's amazing. I mean, he comes from an architecture and sound design background, like total, like very, very complimentary to me, who has no kind of experience in that. And I'm purely in like visuals and marketing. I told him my idea, and he was like, "This is great. Could we do it? Like, do you want like time lapse support? Like, if you can find like funding and if you can like help me, then yes, absolutely." So we worked together. Like December, I was like, "I want to find a venue in December." We found a great one that were very aligned with our interest to create a space for young artists and diverse artists, and just got the ball rolling so that when everyone came back from New Year's holidays, it was like open call, submit your work, blah, 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 all of that. And then February 10, 12, 17, I don't even remember anymore. February, I think 17, 18, there we go, 17, 18 was our event. So it was like, wow, it was like a series of talks that would happen in the morning. It's from 10 a.m. till about 3 or 4. And then we would transform the space we were in and then open it up to an exhibition. So we did this for 2 days. Um, that's my long monologue. You're asking how it started. Like that, this was so many different influences, like it just doesn't come out of nowhere. My brain kind of like ping pongs, like in my artistic things, I just like ping pong with different ideas. And it was the same. Like I had all of this unrest and rage and frustration and inspiration, and so many people influenced me along the way so that this could finally become a reality.
Mhm. No, that sounds really interesting, just the way that you're coming from it, the context that, this was something really important to you, right? So now I'm curious, like, how does one start this logistically? What are the first steps? So you have the idea, you have the inspiration, right? But what do you do first? For other people that want to learn how to potentially, create a symposium, right? And stuff like that, because it's a lot of work, right? And this one, it was from the 17th to 18th of February, but no one gets to necessarily see the amount of work that it actually takes to put an exhibition or a symposium for 2 days or, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious how that worked for you and what help you had, right? That's another important thing.
Yeah, I think the number one is who can you like think about who can you rely on, right? Who can
Mhm.
because you cannot do this all by yourself. This is a very big life lesson for me. I tend to be very lone wolf and solo, and it was very clear. I was like, I cannot do like I'm also kind of just getting started in Berlin. Like, what are the legalities even of doing something like this, Um, and so step number one was really finding someone I could collaborate on this with. So I was very glad to know of TimeLab. I was already a little bit involved with them anyway. And I was very glad that Basel also has the same energy. It's funny because he runs a studio called Slow Future. And
Mhm.
I met kind of the team from Slow Future, and everyone is very calm energy, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna pitch my ideas, but I think maybe we should take a break because I'm just gonna roller coaster times two on the YouTube video, run through my ideas because I am this kind of energy, right? So I think finding someone that can complement you very well was
Yeah.
super important, both in terms of the experience, like he's coming from a sound architecture background, I'm coming from visuals and digital, but also in terms of emotional energies, he's very calm. I need calm energy. If we're both frantic, there's nothing's gonna get done, So number
Mhm.
one, finding someone you can really trust and rely on who also has that same passion and initiative. Number two is just start talking to people. You gotta find a way to make yourself accountable. It was finally to a point where, I had spoken to so many people about this idea and important people as well, that then I was just like, what's next? Like, what? Okay, I guess I have to make it happen. And for me, the next step was to find a physical place and start having more formal conversations. So, I mean, logistically, it was insanity. I have a lot of Excel documents. The tabs are insane, but logistically, it was that talk to people, see what kind of support I could get, but also see is there what do people need? People were missing connection, right? People were missing community. People wanted to connect with other people, so that was a big thing. And also try to whenever I was always I have this idea, it was also but how can I best support you? What do you need? So try to make sure that it's also give and take so that everyone has a chance to benefit from your idea, because you want as many hearts and minds in your crazy idea as you possibly can get. And I think I would say the other important thing is to go to everything. Like I go to all the exhibitions, all the talks, to just keep running into the same people also. For
Hmm.
me, it's super important also as being someone new in the city, so it was, we were also Berlin January is a crazy time because there's CTM, there's Transmediale, there's the Berliner, there's the film festival also that happens. It's a very, very hectic time. And I just went to as much as I possibly could, so
Mhm.
that people can see you, they see that you're active, they remember you, you meet other artists also from doing this, so that was my third thing, also to just be as present as possible and also try to establish myself in the city. Um, and find a venue, get funding. Easy.
The most simple things ever.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to add something, like two little things from all the things that you've been saying. So the first one is that I find it really surprising that it's in Germany in your school it was like such a male dominated thing. I can't think of a moment where I have not been either one out of three guys or one, you know? Like in like everything I've moved around, like my master's, my PhD, my bachelor's, as a lecturer, as a curator, I've always been the one man and surrounded in like in a field that's mostly controlled by women at the mid to low level. That is a very sad thing. Um, and the other thing, well, I don't know if you want to comment on that first.
No, keep going. I mean,
Okay.
I was surprised about it too. I mean, it's not something that you're conscious about until it becomes a problem, right? Like,
Yeah, of course.
like there's nothing wrong with having male professors at all. But then it's a problem when it's like, oh, you are so deeply ingrained in the patriarchy that you are just completely blind. Okay. So I've had like a few incidents like that of like, okay. Uh moving on, But yeah, keep
Yeah.
going.
And the other one is just like an observation. I made this comment last time when we were talking about a little bit about Manifest and also the Emmerman show with Nadav, that I think art schools are like really screwing up by not teaching project management. Because I think one of the biggest, like the thing we do most is manage projects. Like even as an artist, like an individual artist, you're everything you do is a project. So if you don't know how to handle your time, if you don't know how to calculate a budget, if you don't know how to, deliver on time, that's how we keep running into problems. And I think this is an endemic thing. I don't know what you two guys think. Y'all think.
Y'all. And I will say, like, I think so. I actually cut my master's short. Like, I was supposed to do a year and a half, and then there was an opportunity that where I could actually finish it in a year, so I decided to take it. Um, and I believe in the 2-year version of the program, there is like some project management. I don't know how successful it is and what people learn, but there is something, and I've heard good things about it
Oh,
so far. But which is interesting, which I think is necessary if you're in a building with also like business students. Like, why aren't you like,
Yeah.
benefiting from each other? So it would be, I really need to like look at what they're studying. But I agree, like when I mean, one of the kind of challenges with creating a space for also young artists and artists where maybe it's your first time exhibiting is that it's your first time exhibiting. There's so many challenges with that. Um, and I think we were also, getting students who from the university who were, doing their final projects to exhibit in the symposium. They would also like help organize the event and set up the event. But I don't know if and they're master students, right? Some of them are older than
mm.
me. So there's clear I underline that some of them are older than me. There's clearly like a gap in uh because I'm just such a doer also, and I came from such an experience where you just have to get up and do, and like that sometimes it is difficult to be like, I think, communicate what needs to be done in an exhibition, but also like how do you instill like little grains of project management skills if it's your first
Mhm.
time, right? Like I actually don't know if I have an answer to this for when it's like something new, or how best to communicate that when you're also dealing with so many people. um but I agree. I think as an artist, like you absolutely need those skills because you're gonna be in so many instances, so many situations where you're just gonna have to figure it out for yourself. Like no one's gonna be there to help you because they're dealing with like 50 other artists or 100 other artists. Like you are just one list and a name in so many other situations. So you absolutely have to like be technical. Like I've met so many artists that they're doing technical things, but they're not technical people, and like you can improve that, you can work on that, right? Like basic understanding of signal flow and things like that. Like, oh, I could go on a whole like rant about this, but I'll stop there. What do you think, Connie?
No, but I think there's several things that come up to mind. I know was it last semester? I think it was last semester. I did an exhibition for a final project for my students, and it went really well. But I ran into some similar issues where it was a mix between architecture students and art students from the specific university, who is mostly a mix of engineering, architecture, and artists, right? So it's really interesting. But what I noticed, and I think it's partially somewhat of an issue, or a big issue, I should say, is that not all the students have the same resources to the same things
Mm.
that other people do. Like technology-wise, they don't. Some people were not able to get plinths, something so simple to put or mount
Mhm.
their sculpture or anything. So they had to ask a student from a different department to go get one. Like it, or even take out technology or AV equipment, things like that. The other thing, so I definitely think that the lack of resources and also the lack of cross-disciplinary, within a university is something that is so difficult for students who want to work in across disciplinary boundaries, right? And so that's one of the issues too. But the other thing that I also learned from my experience, which wasn't a symposium or at all, right? It was just an exhibition, but is the power of delegating. I'm also a person that likes to do things myself, but when you're, when you want to do something really big and do a really good professional job, at the same time, there's some point where you just say, well, I need to delegate because I can't be everywhere at the same time all at once, right? And so having faith also for me, that's something I learned. Having faith in other people to do or accomplish a little task that I asked them to was so helpful and so liberating. So that's one thing that just came up
Oh
from
my
what you
God,
were talking
I
about.
need to learn that skill.
Yeah,
And
sometimes you're
I,
forced to do it.
yeah, I think it's like, yeah, I need to learn how to delegate, but it's also, I need to, because there's clearly like a gap in, I'm like interested in like how also people receive information and like what is missing. And, sometimes it's a language barrier. Sometimes it's like, sometimes I'm also just in my head and maybe I haven't like said it properly, right? So I need to improve on a lot of skills. But I'm thinking also like tomorrow I'm organizing an event, and there's like an Instagram post that says the venue, the time, which is just like 8 p.m., you know. And I've gotten so many people that are like, what time is it? Where is it? What's it? And I'm like, it's literally like there. They're like,
It's
oh,
like,
it's from 8 to 11, right? I'm like, no, it literally just says 8. Where did you get 11, right? Like, so I'm like, like I think there's a lot of repetition involved, which is hard. I think also working in such a condensed time frame of like literally like we're gonna make something happen in 4 weeks. How do you make sure people feel safe, that they're also like aware of what's happening? How do you properly communicate all the moving pieces, what's necessary and what's not necessary to communicate to whom and where and whatever? Like sometimes that's a challenge. um and I can be better at it, but I don't have like a good I don't have good advice at this point in time for how to navigate that.
So I think the first lesson is never give an instruction or an order that you don't want to keep giving.
yeah,
So like
that's
if you tell someone like do this, they're never gonna do it on their own. They're always gonna ask for your permission and they're gonna want you to tell them what. If you do something for someone as well, like let's say they did something and you look at it and it's wrong and you do it for them, they're gonna stop doing it and you're gonna have to
they
do it
won't learn.
yourself.
They won't learn either, right? That's
Wait,
No, they
probably
I'm
will learn.
confused.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that? Like it feels
So
it feels very resonant. So I'm like, oh, please say
okay,
that again.
so never give an instruction that you don't want to give over and over again. So basically, if you tell someone do this, they're gonna ask you for permission to do it every single time afterwards. So you're gonna have to be on top of that. And also, if they do something wrong, don't just fix it yourself. Tell them to fix it. Or expect them to fix it and then be like, why didn't you fix it? Don't tell them fix it because they're gonna wait for you to tell them to fix it. And
Mm.
that's just human nature. And if you if you give people enough leeway, like if you say, okay, we have this thing, we need this on, this on, this on, this is your thing, this is your thing, this is your thing, that's delegating, that's fine. But the second that you go, no, don't do it this way, do it this way, they're going to stop doing it and they're going to wait for you to do it. That's like, I don't know if you had something like that with like your mom when like you would make your bed and then she would make it over again and then you're like, well, what's the point of me doing it, right? You know that feeling.
Yes.
So that's basically what it means. It's like, don't be your mom. Don't do the things for them. Let them fix it. If they don't fix it, then you go on to them and say, like, why didn't you fix it? If you tell them to fix it, they're gonna wait for you to tell them to fix it. If you just go, why didn't you fix it? Just let me know what happened, what you did to fix it, and then do it. That's different. Otherwise, you become everybody's nanny. And that's aside from becoming every single...
The next exhibition, just like sitting there and everyone be like, what should we do? I'm like, what do you think we should do? But it's funny because I would say like on our first day, like before we opened, at some point someone came up to me and was like, Harshini, we have a problem. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's like a million problems. So pick one.
Get in line.
Like, you know, we don't have any like descriptions for the works. We didn't print out description. And I was like, yeah, I'm aware. And she just like looked at me like point blank, like expecting me to say something more, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm aware. She's like, does it exist somewhere? And I'm like, yeah, but it's not updated because, you know, people sent me stuff this morning also to edit. So there's a document, it's not updated. They're like, would you like us to like put that together and print it? I'm like, that would be fantastic. And she's like, okay, we'll go do that now. I'm like, great. It was the most, I was like, I know it's going to be done not perfectly. There's going to be issues with the names. There's going to be some person, you know, they're probably at the very least, I was like, they're asking what font should we use? And like, just please don't choose anything ugly. Just please use a default. Like, we don't need to overthink this. But just let it happen, you know, like it's better that it gets done rather than it not. And if I can take one thing off my plate, then that's also very helpful, right?
Yeah. No, and I think that was the right way to approach it. Like, exactly, that's what I said. Like, it's not, you didn't tell them what to do. You just let them come to the conclusion that they had to do it themselves. Right?
Yeah, so I think,
otherwise,
I mean,
they will be asking you for everything.
For next time, I mean, one of the things, I think I was too relaxed also with when I did the open call for submissions and things. I was too relaxed in like, oh yeah, like I know you're still working on your project. You can send me the description later, you know? Oh
no, never take that.
Yeah, sorry.
No. Big mistake.
Never again.
No.
I think, you know, deadline, and that's it, you know, like make it mandatory, asterisk required on the form, you know. Oh my God, that was a pain. So
unless you're commissioning it, anything, never take uncompleted.
Yes, I was like,
sorry, I'm speaking over you.
No, it's okay. Next question. No, let's talk about happier, less traumatic things.
Yeah, no. Yeah, just like the quick little thing, like never accept uncompleted work for like an open call or things like that, unless you're commissioning it. If you're commissioning it, it's to be expected. Otherwise, just take finished work. It's a nightmare. Anyhow, Connie, you have a question?
Yeah, I think just what came up for me and thinking about not just the logistics, but also the inspiration, the things, the context that led up to this. What advice would you give people that want to do a symposium from the ground up, right? And don't have the experience. Like if you could name one thing that you would give a really good advice on. And don't say don't do it. But yeah, what would be the one piece of advice that you learned? And maybe because of some of the challenges that you had, everyone goes through challenges and setbacks in building a project, so big like a symposium, right?
I think there's like one advice I would give, and then there's one thing that I learned. So one advice I would give is that you don't have to have the answers to everything, like you don't even need to know, like new media and electronic art is like my whole world. But the point of also symposium is that you grow and you learn and you're like challenged by it as well, right? So maybe there's a topic that you don't understand or anything, like don't be afraid of these things, like curate things that also make you curious, you know, like, so I would say don't be afraid if you don't know anything, like rely on the people around you, right? Learn from,
Yeah.
because it should be that, I think also like in a symposium, it's an exchange. You're learning from everybody involved, from like the technicians that are helping you put your event to the artists that are speaking about their work to everybody, you know. That would be one thing. And then I guess one thing I learned, I feel like I learned a lot of things. One thing I learned is one thing I learned about myself is that I'm a control freak, but I think I already knew that. I think one thing I learned was that, and I remember we had this conversation, Rene, like there's so much responsibility to being a curator, right? Like it's not only putting the works together and, you know, thinking about what conversations you want to have, what spaces work best for the works, but it's also like, is everyone okay? Like there's such an emotional energy, and that's also, maybe it's also because I'm like curating and I'm organizing it too. Like I'm constantly trying to make sure, like, are the institutions happy? Are the individuals happy? Do they have everything they need? You know, and that's a lot of like emotional input from everybody. So
You
I
become
don't think,
everybody's therapist.
yes, you become everyone's therapist. We talked about this last time. I don't think I was prepared for that. So I think one thing I learned is that I also need to find, like, there's the logistical side to everything, right? But then I also need to find a way to take care of my own mental health through this process. And I don't think I have an answer yet. This is a very much a work in progress. But I think being mindful of that, like I didn't anticipate that uh that having to be a conversation that I needed to have with myself also. And I think, you know, having someone also like Basil was very calm energy. I would turn to him and be like, how is this happening today? He's like, it's all good, it's happening, you know. It's okay. You know, having someone that I could be like, okay, I'm gonna go like focus on the talk. I'm gonna figure out, you know, the questions for moderating and take that time out so that I could pass that responsibility on to somebody else to make sure everything in the space is working well. I think that was very necessary. So I think, yeah, I would say there's a lot of like emotional input that goes into organizing an event, not just the logistical to-dos.
Yeah. No, absolutely. He says this as he's recording on Sunday. Try and respect your weekends. I think that's the big one. Like have your weekends, go party, eat a pizza, go drink, do whatever you want to do, smoke a bowl. I don't care. Play video games all evening. I don't care. Do something for you, like on the weekends. Don't end up becoming a slave to the work, or it's just gonna become a downward spiral, and you're gonna end up hating everything.
I agree, and
Took
that's
me
something I
like
actually
20
learned.
years.
That's actually something I learned from you, Renee. Because I know
Haha.
I always feel bad like sending emails to people on the weekend, and then I said, "What am I doing with my life? Like I have become a slave to this." You know, now I take a lot more time from, especially now that I'm finishing my projects and things like that. I've learned to be kinder, and I think that's something a lot of people, you know, need to do more of, right? But I was also curious if you can show us images about Manifest.io, right?
Yeah.
And walk us through,
So
you know, everything.
maybe I go in reverse of actually what I had. So actually, like I said, we opened with talks and all the nerdy stuff. I'm a nerd. Like we gotta have talks, okay? We gotta have conversations.
You're on a podcast. Of course you're a nerd.
So I really wanted talks. I really wanted to hear everyone's like research, whether that was like process in an artistic work or like something very, you know, technical. So I tried to curate like a good balance between things. So for example, actually in our first day, our very first talk was with an artist named Ro, who they are doing amazing things with kind of examining like digital bodies and like and in relationship to enchantment and magic. And they're also working at the intersection of digital and performance. And right after, it was a very like it was pretty much a conversation about their artistic practice. And it was also the first time they've ever had to give an artist talk. So they were super nervous. I was like, just rip the Band-Aid. This is the best place to do it, you know, like rip the Band-Aid, 10 minutes, like it'll all be over soon and we're here to support you. And right after that, we had another artist named Johnny, who is a director, who also works with theater and digitality, but speaking more about like he was speaking about like avatars and like different personalities and avatars and the idea of like your digital body and your digital self. And that was like super nerdy and technical, you know, like that was like very much like rooted in like new media text and McLuhan and everything, you know? So it was a good combination between like kind of friendly, approachable, artistic work and then nerdy, very like heavy work, and to have these two artists in conversation with each other. So throughout the day, I tried to have it so also like one led into the other. We had like another artist named Paul Sibulska, who had a very technical presentation. Essentially, he made the first, and I'm like slowing down. It's just like 11, it's almost midnight and my brain is like, what are the words? But he made kind of the first interactive music video with surround sound. So he was talking about working with Dolby Atmos technology, what went into kind of directing and storyboarding the music video, and how sound was such a key component to that. So incredibly technical process. And then to go into, you know, somebody else who's more conversational and artistic. And for me, it was also important to have collectives, like there's a collective based between Thailand and Germany, if I'm not mistaken, called Untitled. And we had Kantatak, who's from Untitled, talk about their practice in kind of reimagining or critiquing kind of traditional dance and traditional theater forms in Thailand, and how you could apply new media technologies to reimagine these dance forms or theater forms. And if by adding this technology, are you kind of re-exoticizing the dance forms? Like, are you recolonizing it through this kind of gaze, re-exoticizing? So I was talking about that kind of like nuance and a particular project that they did called Defrost, which looks at all of these conversations between the colonial and the exotic gaze and how they use technology in their practice. So it was really great. And I actually had I remember on the very last day, I also had an artist, Rahel Rudolph, as kind of our last speaker or our penultimate speaker. She did a project like critiquing the idea of immersion, and she has an amazing satirical project where she made her own VR, her own augmented reality glasses. It's just like, you know, like a VR headset, but just mirrors. She does this whole photo series about being outside, you know, and how you're like immersed in your surroundings, and critiquing this idea of why do we, you know, call it immersion when, you know, immersion is, you know, all around us all the time anyway. Like that, this should not be the vocabulary that we use. And the idea of being immersed somewhere, like, and I remember I asked her to do her talk, and she was like, "Are you sure this is like the right platform for this? Like, I'm just gonna, you know, shit on everybody and their work if you're putting me at the very end." And I was like, "Go for it! Like, throw everyone under the bus. Like, this is would be an amazing end to like flip the switch and really like start critiquing about the frameworks that we're using to talk about new media and everything." So it was great. And so we had this amazing space in a venue called Alte Munze, which used to be an old the old coin factory in Berlin, and it's now like this amazing hub for arts and culture, and they're doing amazing things. They do everything from like drag shows to photography exhibits, and it's a massive venue. So we were grateful to be able to secure this venue, which is like a gallery. And on the second day, we actually had the gallery on the first day, and on the second day we had the gallery, and we had access to a club that was right next door. So we did some performances there. We also had access to a container outside, so we were able to add a few more installations to the lineup. But essentially we would have the talks in this area, and we had about like between maybe 30 to 120 people attend the talks. It just grew. with each hour, which is great. And then we would send everyone away for an hour. We're like, okay, bye. And then we would shift things in, move things around, clear the chairs, and open it up to an exhibition that would be on the ground floor and the top floor of this gallery. And it was a combination of virtual reality works, AI films. There was some augmented reality works as well. Mainly a lot of installations that were audiovisual installations or spatial sound installations. So we got a little bit of everything going on. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges was also, I mean, for me in terms of projection, making sure that, you know, we're not getting too much light, also bleeding from one work to the other. I realized that for the setup that we have, maybe augmented reality works were a little bit unrealistic to host in the space, because as a projection designer also, you know, I want everything dark, and AR works apparently need light. So that was a good learning curve. Yeah, that was AR works need light and space, two things that I could
So
not
do VR.
guarantee. Right?
Do you know that?
I
VR
would
also
assume,
needs light.
I didn't know that VR needed light. What I would assume is to detect the space initially. Is that what it is?
Yeah, in a part, if you use like a virtual cage, yes, but also for hand tracking, for tracking the controllers. When you're using an Oculus, if it's too dark, it won't work.
Amazing. Yeah.
For example, yeah, light is weird.
Yeah, that's good. I think we were lucky that the VR works we had didn't have any hand controls. So they were, you know, sit down experiences. So we were able to create a very nice like VR lounge area upstairs with some works from a university called HTV. They had amazing VR works. But yeah, I think even for next year, I'm thinking like, okay, I don't think either, you know, augmented reality is maybe something we have only during the day and in like a very specific area, or that I don't accept AR works at all, because it was really something that I want dark, I want darkness. And we were limited in space. So was definitely a good like learning experience to learn, because it was not something that I anticipated. And I was actually very lucky to have a conversation with Nadine Colotier, who's an amazing augmented reality artist. She even works with Adobe. Someone whose work I really looked up to, and I had messaged her on Instagram if she would exhibit her work at Manifestación. She said yes, and we had a conversation in her studio, and she was talking about the kind of the needs of her work portals. And it was like, okay, there needs to be space and light. And I think just having that initial conversation with her was such a privilege, to have that kind of information beforehand, to start thinking kind of also scenographically about an AR work, instead of, you know, exclusively digital. Like what does the space around the work look like? How could we make it work with the inside of the gallery, but also outside? Because there's also like an entrance that comes in from outside. So it's very informative. But yes, AR works with the most challenging part. We had a range of stuff. Obviously, a lot of artists also looking at AI. This was a work that I was very glad that we could exhibit. In the beginning, we were limited in space, but we were able to create an area where, okay, we could actually show Anima by Masha and Ekaterina from HTV in its most idealized form, which was to have this multi-channel 2-screen display, so that you see this dancer on one side, and then you see how they've transformed her body using AI. And the visuals are absolutely beautiful. So I was glad that we were able to create space for a work like this. And I think one of the other challenging things was we were a two-day event. And ideally, you know, nothing changes, but why not throw a spanner in the works, right? So we actually had, you know, one artist that they could only exhibit on one day, only on the 17th, and we had 2 artists that they could only exhibit on the 18th. So we did like also, you know, on the second day there were like maybe 6 actually additional works. You know, one work came down, 6 additional works were put up. We had access to a container outside, like new works were being installed in the morning. I connected a TV and then we lost power in the first floor. So don't add new things is also the lesson, but it ended up being really well. And it also meant we had also great responses to the fact that, you know, there was something new to look at on the second day. And yeah, I also wanted to show like one of the VR works was actually looking at femicide in Germany, and they had translated their data and research into this like very surreal and beautiful and VR experience, which is just amazing. It's unfortunately only in German, if I recall, but it's having a good afterlife, exhibiting in other places in Berlin. And I had mentioned like there were works that I had seen in Ars Electronica that I thought were excellent. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what's the gap? So I actually, one of the works that I saw was this installation called Das Ding, which is this amazing installation where it's you're in front of an analog TV and you can like choose like what genre you want to watch, like fiction, fantasy, whatever. And then as you're choosing things, you realize that it's also talking to you, and it becomes like very uncomfortable. And like, it's an amazing experience. I cannot even imagine, like, I had a conversation with the artists about the different branches of narratives that they've put together, and it's kind of amazing. But I was like super happy that I like found the like photo that I had taken in Ars Electronica of their names, and I messaged one of them on Instagram, and they were very excited and happy to show their work at Manifest.io. So for me, this is also like a full circle moment to be like, you know, like this work inspired me like a few months ago, and that's why we're doing this now. So it's like a really, really lovely to have them in the space and see this work again also. And yeah, so many projects. Yeah.
So I guess one of my last questions is what is the future hold for you? Like, what other projects are you working on right now? Do you think you're going to do another symposium anytime soon? What's to come?
There will be a Manifest.io 2.0. For sure. I'm already like planning. I'm already planning this. I'm in the process of doing the post-symposium stuff for this. But I'm already planning the next one. So that's one. It'll be in February again next year. The most immediate things, oh my God, there's so many things. I'm also like, I've also just like joined so many different groups, collectives, institutions. And so I'm also in my head, like, what can I talk about and what can't I talk about? But the most pressing thing is, I guess, I wanted to do an audio visual festival or series using a piece of technology that's a volumetric video display by a company called LED Pulse. They have this volumetric video display called the Dragon that I'm absolutely fascinated by. And I want to do an audiovisual festival around that it kind of ignites the touch designer community here and really create a space that's like kind of like a residency laboratory situation where you would have like a week to be able to create content specifically for this thing, have a chance to create something that's site specific, and then have kind of a series of weekends that activates into performances and installations. So that's one thing that I'm kind of in the process of planning and figuring out the logistics for. Next May, I have some artist talks and things. I'm so excited and also nervous. Like my imposter syndrome is like, why? In Berlin, one can I talk about it? No, I can't actually announce it yet, but I have like 2 or 3 things happening in Berlin, which is our artist talks. And then I'm also working tomorrow. Tomorrow's Monday. Today is Monday now. Today, in a few hours, I start an artist residency at Monum. It's a 4D spatial sound studio that actually has this volumetric display that I was talking about. And I brought in a collaborator from who's based between Marseille and Berlin, Jun Suzuki, that together we're gonna develop something new. It's the first time we're collaborating together, and we're looking at AI and all of these conversations surrounding AI. And we want to create something that is, yeah, like a intense audio visual experience. So really making full use of this amazing spatial sound studio, making use of this like amazing video display. And so that's the most immediate thing that I'll be starting in 10 hours.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a
So
lot of things. Congratulations.
that's like even like 1%. When we get off the call, when we get off the podcast, I can like tell you all of the things.
A lot of flexing going on.
But I will say, like, after the symposium, I really wanted to focus on curation. And I was like, I guess producing is like the thing that I'm good at. I like making things happen. So I started, I became also an event producer for an amazing dancer and choreographer, Alvin Colantes, who runs Dose of Pleasure events in Berlin, which are the dance meditation sessions that happen every month in Berlin. So I'm also hoping on that and trying to find ways to like bring people together and connect people. I think that's the most important thing. I'm not really like, I came from a culture where like knowledge is power, so you don't share your knowledge because you don't want anyone to like, supersede you. And it's an incredibly competitive culture. And so I don't want that at all. I want to like share as much as possible so that everyone has equal chance and opportunity. So that's really also what drives me kind of like against my culture. Yeah. So I got a few artistic things, some event stuff happening. People can follow me on Instagram and see all my craziness. And yeah.
That's a lot of work, and it's fantastic that I'm really amazed at everything you achieved. And like, this thing is fantastically huge, right?
Manifest.io, there was so much to learn from it, and so many things that went well, so many things to improve on. But I will say one of the things that went well is that some of the works are having an afterlife. Like yesterday, there's a new collective called Symbiotism in Berlin that they also are very much like engaged, and they want to create community and connect people. And they just had their first major event yesterday. Was it yesterday? On the 22nd. And it was amazing because they had seen some works in Manifest.io and they invited the artists to exhibit. Like this for me is like the best case scenario.
Awesome.
So I was like super happy to see Federico Torres exhibit the work that I was his professor, and like seeing how he built up the work and seeing like where it started to also now having the chance to see so many different iterations and so many different versions, and that's great, and I think to have it be that we're also always like helping each other and learning from each other, that's really like the best case scenario for us.
Yeah, I think if anything you should take away from this is that you help people like move forward in a field that's so difficult. And I think that's the most important thing that you should take away from that. Do you have any other questions, Connie? All right, so I want to thank you for sharing like a more in-depth explanation of your show, your exhibition, all the challenges you went through, and
so many
the
challenges.
way you figured it out. So many challenges. I feel you. I know it's famous. Oh my god, yeah, it's complicated, but it's
I really
rewarding.
want to iterate though, like I said this even in the last episode, like it takes a village. Like this is not possible without so many people also like trusting me, but also giving their time and labor to make this happen. Like we also had an amazing group, Recordat and Radio Al Hara, a Palestinian radio station based in Berlin, that they not only like curated our series of performances that we did on the second night, but they were also like there, like on the ground, like giving their labor to like help us, like build walls for the exhibition, or helping students with their work. So there's so many people involved, like the list is like freaking endless. Like I'm so grateful for the number of people that like came together to make this possible.
I mean, if you want to make like special mentions of anyone, like feel free to do that.
Oh my God, Ephemeral Tomorrow, they're just like amazing. It's an artist collective, but they're also like two of them teach in the university. And they're freelance teachers. They don't need to give their time to this, but they did. They were there like the day of setting up, like not only like physically helping us move stuff around, but helping students with their patches, their touch designer patches. Amazing. Radio Alhara Record that, as I mentioned, like also physically being there. Stefan Gunzo, Emily Smith, like all the like faculty from the new media design department at the university. And actually even the university was able to give us funding to secure the venue. So I was like, oh, a huge relief, and then the Altamunza team as well, just incredibly supportive. Like it's very, I had to meet a couple of other venues this week for looking at the second iteration of Manifest.io, and it was very clear to me that Alta Munza is a partnership I would like to maintain, because there's no other venue really that is so dedicated to, creating space. Like so many of the other venues I approached, they were so focused on like profit and like how many people are attending, and like, oh, we could do this for an added cost and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, like, it's just like, so annoying. But a venue like Ultimansa, there's a lot of passion and heart that goes into every event that they bring and that they curate and that they help set up. So very grateful to the team, because even like the technical team were great to work with and helping us problem solve and everything. So yeah, so many other people from different universities too, but I will say all of the gratitude will be given in a post-symposium catalog, which will eventually come out. And
Yeah.
and then everyone can also check out in detail all the works that will be mentioned in the catalog.
Fantastic. All right then. So,
Perfect.
sorry, go ahead. Okay. So, before we go, first of all, I wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you, Connie, for being here with us. Also, Harshini is also our producer, so thank you for that as well. Another
Yes, so I'm like
hat,
constantly looking here, like, is it recording?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's also like handling the recording, the managing the editing, all that stuff. So no, it's not a small contribution. And well, obviously not the part, but Constanza also with her whole like fantastic questions and helping me come up with ideas and everything. I also want to add a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna get in trouble, but we can edit it. I want to congratulate Connie that she's finally gonna do her defense in like 2 days for her PhD.
Thank you so much.
Even though she pretends, I'm pretty sure she's got it.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And yeah, you have earned it. Congratulations on that, because it takes so much work to do a PhD, and especially the way you did it, 7 years. Oh dear God, that's a lot of work and demanding things. So congratulations, you earned it. Go get it to 2 or something. And then what else? I had like several announcements to make, but I think so. There's the exhibition that we have up right now. Also, don't miss that. It's with Morgan Green. And they are Filipino artists. Well, Filipino American artists. Their work is really interesting. It's all running on the web browser. It's Perl based, I think, or I think it is Perl. So it's really impressive work that they've managed. What else do we have to say? I think that's pretty much it. I just want to thank everyone for being here, for listening to us, and we hope that you like and subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.